I still remember the exact moment my world shattered. It wasn't when I caught him cheating or when we had our final screaming match. It was on a quiet Tuesday morning in my downtown Boston apartment, sitting at my kitchen island with a cup of coffee, staring at my banking app in disbelief. The number that had once represented 7 years of careful saving, 127,843, now showed a balance of 212.37. My name is Alexis Morgan. At 32, I was what most people would call successful. Senior marketing strategist at a respected firm, owner of a cozy Beacon Hill apartment with views of the Charles River, and until 3 days ago, fiancé to James Harrington, the rising star of Boston's financial technology scene. Our engagement party had been the previous Saturday, a lavish affair at the Four Seasons that my parents had insisted on hosting, despite my protests that it was too extravagant. The memory of that night now felt like a cruel joke. James toasting to our future together while secretly knowing what he had already done. I scrolled through my transaction history with trembling hands. A single withdrawal made the morning of our engagement party. Transfer to external account. The withdrawal slip had been signed with my name, a forgery so perfect it had fooled the bank teller. My phone buzzed with a text from my best friend Zoe. "Have you heard from him yet?" I couldn't bring myself to reply. What would I even say? That the man I had planned to marry had not only cheated on me with his administrative assistant, but had also cleaned out my savings account before disappearing. The humiliation burned worse than the betrayal. I called the bank immediately, my voice shaking as I explained the situation. They were sympathetic, but not particularly helpful. Yes, they would investigate. Yes, they would file a police report. But the money had already been transferred to an offshore account, and recovery would be challenging. The bank representative's tone made it clear that challenging meant nearly impossible. After hanging up, I did what any rational person would do. I hurled my phone across the room, sank to the kitchen floor, and sobbed until my throat was raw. 7 years of overtime, of passing on vacations, of making coffee at home instead of buying it at cafes, all gone in a single transaction. The following days passed in a blur of police statements, lawyer consultations, and sleepless nights. James had vanished, his condo emptied, his social media accounts deactivated. His parents, Boston Brahmin to the core, denied any knowledge of his whereabouts and suggested with thinly veiled contempt that perhaps I had misunderstood the situation. After all, their son would never do something so crass as theft. A week after discovering the theft, I was sitting in my living room surrounded by legal papers when my phone rang. The caller ID showed unknown, but I answered anyway, hoping against hope it might be news about my money. "Alexis Morgan?" The voice was female, unfamiliar. "Yes, speaking." "My name is Vanessa Chen. You don't know me, but I know a lot about you, and about James Harrington." I sat up straighter. "Who are you?" "I'm the CFO of Meridian Technologies." "I know who you are," I interrupted. Everyone in Boston's tech scene knew Meridian Technologies, the innovative fintech startup that was giving established companies like James's employer, Apex Financial Solutions, a run for their money. What does this have to do with me? "I think we should meet in person. There are things you should know about your ex-fiancé and the company he worked for, she corrected herself. "And I believe you might be interested in a mutually beneficial arrangement." We agreed to meet at a small cafe in Cambridge, away from the financial district, where we might be recognized. As I hung up, I felt something stir within me, something beyond the numbness and despair that had defined the past week. It was a flicker of hope, yes, but also something darker, something that whispered of justice, or perhaps revenge. I spent an hour getting ready, something I hadn't bothered to do since the theft. I applied my makeup with precision, chose a sleek black dress that hugged my curves but still looked professional, and styled my honey blonde hair into soft waves. If Vanessa Chen wanted to meet the woman James had betrayed, she would meet me at my best, not broken on my kitchen floor. The cafe was crowded when I arrived, but I spotted Vanessa immediately. She sat in a corner booth, her posture impeccable, dressed in a tailored navy suit that screamed quiet power. She was in her mid-40s, with short black hair and the kind of confidence that commanded attention without demanding it. "Thank you for coming," she said, as I slid into the booth across from her. Her handshake was firm, her gaze direct. "I ordered you a latte. I hope that's acceptable." I nodded, though I was surprised she knew my drink preference. "How do you know about me, about James?" Vanessa took a sip of her espresso before answering. "Boston's financial technology community is smaller than you might think, and your fiancé, ex-fiancé, hasn't exactly been discreet about his activities." "You mean stealing my money?" "That, yes, but also his other indiscretions. James Harrington has been selling proprietary information from Apex to competitors for years. Not to us," she added quickly, seeing my expression. "We don't operate that way, but we've heard rumors. And when someone unexpectedly comes into a large sum of money and then disappears, people talk." I stared at her, processing this new information. "So he's been stealing from his employer too, among other things." She slid a folder across the table. "This contains information about certain investments James made recently, investments that suggest he knew something big was coming, something that would tank Apex's stock." I flipped through the documents, understanding enough of the financial jargon to grasp what I was seeing. He shorted his own company's stock. Vanessa nodded. 2 days before their cybersecurity breach became public knowledge. "The breach that made their stock drop 30% overnight," I murmured, remembering the financial news from the previous week. I'd been too wrapped up in my own drama to connect the dots. "Exactly." Vanessa leaned forward. "Here's my proposition, Ms. Morgan. You worked in proximity to James for years. You likely know things, perhaps without even realizing you know them, that could be valuable. Information about Apex's strategies, their vulnerabilities, their clients." I stiffened. "I'm not a corporate spy," she smiled, a genuine expression that softened her sharp features. "I'm not asking you to be. I'm offering you a job. Your background in marketing is impressive, and we're looking to expand our brand visibility. But more importantly, I'm offering you an investment opportunity." "An investment? In what?" "I have no money left to invest." "In Meridian Technologies. We're preparing for our IPO next quarter. Before that happens, we're offering a limited number of private investors the opportunity to buy in at a preferred rate." She named a figure that made my eyes widen. "This is significantly below what our shares will be valued at when we go public. Why would you offer this to me? You don't know me. Let's just say I have a personal interest in seeing James Harrington and his associates at Apex face consequences for their actions. And I believe in women supporting women." She reached into her purse and withdrew a business card, sliding it across the table. "Think about it. The offer stands for 48 hours. As she stood to leave, she paused, her expression softening. "For what it's worth, I'm sorry about what happened to you. No one deserves that kind of betrayal." After she left, I sat in the cafe for another hour, turning the business card over in my fingers, my mind racing with possibilities. The rational part of me knew I should walk away, focus on rebuilding my life, on recovering what James had stolen from me through legal channels. But another part of me, a part I barely recognized, whispered that this might be my chance not just to recover what I'd lost, but to turn the tables entirely, to show James Harrington that he had underestimated me in the worst possible way. I pulled out my phone and dialed the number on Vanessa's card. "I'm in," I said when she answered, "but I need a loan to make the investment." Her reply was immediate and unhesitating. "Come to our office tomorrow morning, we'll make the arrangements." As I hung up, I felt something shift inside me, a strange mixture of fear and exhilaration. I was about to step into unknown territory, driven by a desire for justice that bordered dangerously on vengeance. But one thing was certain: James Harrington had no idea what was coming. The Meridian Technologies office was nothing like I expected. Located in a renovated textile mill in Somerville, it blended industrial chic with cutting-edge technology. Exposed brick walls and wooden beams contrasted with glass-enclosed meeting rooms and state-of-the-art workstations. It felt alive, dynamic, the complete opposite of Apex's sterile corporate environment that James had often described. Vanessa met me in the lobby, dressed in dark jeans and a crisp white button-down, a stark contrast to yesterday's formal suit. "We only dress up for external meetings," she explained, noticing my surprise. "We believe comfort fosters creativity." She led me through the open workspace, where young professionals typed furiously at computers or engaged in animated discussions around whiteboards covered in diagrams and code. Several people greeted Vanessa warmly as we passed, their curious gazes lingering on me. "Word travels fast," she said with a slight smile. "Everyone's wondering who the new marketing strategist is." "Is that what I am now?" I asked, surprised at how quickly things were moving. "If you want to be." We entered a conference room where a man in his early 50s was waiting, his salt and pepper hair contrasting with a youthful face and bright blue eyes. "Alexis, this is Michael Reeves, our CEO and founder." Michael stood to shake my hand, his grip firm but not overpowering. "Vanessa has told me about your situation. I'm sorry for what you've experienced." His sincerity caught me off guard. I'd expected corporate platitudes, not genuine empathy. "Thank you." "Let's talk about your future," he said, gesturing for me to sit. "Vanessa believes you'd be an asset to our marketing team, and I trust her judgment implicitly. Your work at Barrett & Associates has been impressive, particularly the Newmar campaign last year." I blinked, surprised he knew about that project. "You've researched me." "Of course." He didn't seem apologetic about it. "We're considering bringing you into our company and offering you a significant investment opportunity. Due diligence is essential. For the next hour, we discuss my professional background, my approach to marketing, and my understanding of the fintech industry. It was the most rigorous job interview I'd ever experienced, but also the most engaging. Michael and Vanessa weren't just evaluating my skills, they seemed genuinely interested in my perspectives. Finally, Michael leaned back in his chair. "I think you'll be an excellent fit for Meridian. We'd like to offer you a position as our Director of Brand Strategy, reporting directly to Vanessa." He named a salary that was nearly double what I was making at Barrett & Associates. I tried to keep my expression neutral, but my heart was racing. "As for the investment opportunity," Vanessa continued, sliding a document across the table, "we're prepared to loan you $150,000 at zero interest to purchase shares at our preferred private investor rate. The loan will be repaid from the proceeds when we go public, after which the remaining shares will be yours to keep or sell as you see fit." I stared at the document, my mouth suddenly dry. "What's the catch?" Michael smiled. "The catch, as you put it, is that we expect absolute loyalty and discretion. While we don't want proprietary information about Apex, we don't need it. We do need to know that you're fully committed to Meridian's success. And," Vanessa added, her eyes meeting mine, "we expect you to be comfortable with a certain level of strategic aggressiveness when it comes to our competition." I understood the subtext. They weren't just offering me a job and an investment. They were inviting me to be part of their plan to outmaneuver Apex, and by extension, to help me get my own form of justice against James. "When do you need my decision?" I asked, though in my heart I already knew my answer. "Now," Michael said simply. "We move quickly here at Meridian. It's how we've managed to challenge companies 3 times our size." I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the moment. This wasn't just a career decision. It was a life decision, a choice to embrace a path that might lead to redemption or to a darkness I wasn't sure I was prepared for. But then I thought of James, of the smug confidence with which he must have signed my name on that withdrawal slip, of how easily he had discarded 7 years of trust and love. And I knew what I had to do. "I accept," I said, my voice steadier than I expected. "Both the position and the investment opportunity." Michael's smile widened. "Welcome to Meridian Technologies, Alexis. I think you'll find that revenge is not just a dish best served cold, it's also an excellent business motivator." The next 3 months were the most intense of my professional life. I threw myself into my new role at Meridian with a fervor that surprised even me. My days were filled with strategy sessions, market analyses, and creative brainstorming. I worked closely with our design team to refresh Meridian's brand identity, making it more sophisticated and trustworthy, qualities that Apex had traditionally dominated in the marketplace. At night, I pored over financial reports and industry news, educating myself about the intricacies of the fintech world. I needed to understand not just my job, but the entire ecosystem in which Meridian operated. Knowledge, I was learning, was the most powerful weapon in this battle. Vanessa became not just my boss, but my mentor. She was demanding but fair, pushing me to exceed my own expectations while providing guidance when I needed it. Under her tutelage, I developed a confidence I'd never possessed before, a certainty in my abilities that extended beyond my professional skills. "You're a natural at this," she told me one evening as we worked late, finalizing our pre-IPO marketing strategy. "You understand what motivates people, what they fear, what they desire. It's a rare talent." "I had a good teacher in human motivation," I replied dryly. "Nothing like betrayal to clarify your understanding of people's darker impulses." She laughed, but her eyes were serious. "Just don't lose yourself in the process, Alexis. Revenge is a powerful fuel, but it burns hot and fast. You need something more sustainable to drive you in the long run." I nodded, though I wasn't sure I agreed. The desire to prove James wrong, to show him and everyone else that I wasn't just some naive woman who could be discarded and robbed, continued to burn steadily within me, neither diminishing nor consuming me. As we prepared for the IPO, news broke that rocked Boston's financial community. Apex Financial Solutions was under federal investigation for securities fraud and insider trading. The company's stock, which had partially recovered from the cybersecurity breach, plummeted again. Rumors swirled about key executives being implicated, including several of James's closest associates. "Did you know this was coming?" I asked Vanessa when the news broke. We were in her office, watching CNBC's coverage of the developing scandal. She didn't answer immediately, her expression unreadable. "Let's just say we had our suspicions about certain practices at Apex. We may have ensured that the right information reached the right regulatory authorities." "Information that I provided." My voice was quiet but not accusatory. Over the past months, I'd shared countless memories of conversations with James, details about meetings he'd attended, phone calls he'd taken, names he'd mentioned. Things I hadn't realized were significant at the time. "You connected dots. We couldn't have connected ourselves," Vanessa acknowledged. "But you didn't do anything wrong, Alexis. You simply helped expose what was already there." I wasn't entirely sure I believed her, or myself. The line between justice and vengeance had become increasingly blurred. But whenever doubt crept in, I reminded myself of that moment in my kitchen, staring at my nearly empty bank account, and my resolve would harden again. 2 weeks before our scheduled IPO, Michael called an all-staff meeting. The energy in the room was electric as he took his place at the front. "I have 2 significant announcements today," he began, his voice carrying effortlessly through the crowded space. First, based on initial investor interest, we're increasing our IPO target price by 30%. A murmur of excitement rippled through the room. This was unprecedented for a company our size. Second, Michael continued, his gaze finding mine in the crowd, we've just received word that Apex Financial Solutions is seeking a buyer. Their board has approached several potential acquirers, including Meridian Technologies. The room erupted in gasps and exclamations. Apex, despite its recent troubles, was still 5 times our size. The idea that we might acquire them seemed impossible. "Are we considering it?" someone called out. Michael's smile was enigmatic. "We're exploring all options that align with our strategic goals. That's all I can say for now." As the meeting dispersed, Vanessa pulled me aside. "Come to my office in 10 minutes, she murmured. "There's something you need to know." No. When I entered her office, Michael was already there, along with 2 people I didn't recognize. A woman in a severe suit who was introduced as our outside counsel, and a man who was identified only as a representative from the SEC. "What's going on?" I asked, suddenly nervous. "Please sit down," Michael said, his tone gentle but serious. "We've been working with the SEC for the past several months, providing evidence of financial malfeasance at Apex." The SEC representative nodded. "The information you've provided has been invaluable to our investigation, Ms. Morgan." "I didn't provide any information to the SEC," I said, confused. "Not directly," the lawyer clarified. "But the insights you shared with Meridian formed a crucial part of the documentation we submitted to the authorities." I looked at Vanessa, feeling a mix of betrayal and vindication. "You used me." "We gave you exactly what we promised," she replied calmly. "A job, an investment opportunity, and a chance at justice. The method may have been more roundabout than you expected, but the result is the same." "There's more," Michael interjected. "James Harrington has been located in Belize. He's being extradited to face charges of fraud, embezzlement, and corporate espionage." The room seemed to tilt slightly. After months of silence, of wondering where James had disappeared to with my money and his secrets, he was finally being brought to justice. "What does this mean for me?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "It means you'll likely recover at least a portion of your stolen funds," the lawyer said. "And as a material witness in the case against both James and Apex, you'll be entitled to a percentage of any settlements resulting from the SEC investigation." "But more immediately," Michael added, "it means that your investment in Meridian is about to pay off spectacularly. If we acquire Apex, even at a deeply discounted price, our IPO valuation will quadruple overnight." I should have felt triumphant. This was everything I'd worked toward for the past 3 months: financial recovery, professional success, and justice against James. Yet all I felt was a strange emptiness, as if I'd been running a marathon, only to find that the finish line wasn't where I expected it to be. "I need some air," I said, standing abruptly. Vanessa followed me out onto the rooftop terrace that served as Meridian's break area. The Boston skyline spread before us, glittering in the late afternoon sun. "It's a lot to process," she said, coming to stand beside me at the railing. "Did you plan this from the beginning? Finding me, bringing me in, using my knowledge against Apex?" She considered the question for a moment. "Not exactly. We knew James had stolen from you, and we suspected he was involved in larger irregularities at Apex. But we didn't anticipate how valuable your perspective would be, or how quickly events would unfold. So I was just a convenient tool." "No." Her voice was firm. "You are a talented professional who deserved better than what happened to you. Did we benefit from your unique insights? Absolutely. But you've also benefited from this arrangement, haven't you?" I couldn't deny it. In 3 months, I'd gone from devastated and broke to employed in a prestigious position with a promising financial future. Yet something still felt unresolved. "What happens after the IPO?" I asked. After James is sentenced and this chapter closes, Vanessa studied me for a long moment. That's entirely up to you, Alexis. You can take your profits and walk away. You can stay with Meridian and help us build something extraordinary. Or you can find another path entirely. She paused. The question is, who do you want to be when this is no longer about revenge? It was a question I hadn't allowed myself to consider. For months, I'd been defined by what had happened to me, by my determination to recover what was taken and prove my worth. The possibility of a future beyond that singular focus felt both liberating and terrifying. As I stared out at the city where my life had been shattered and then improbably rebuilt, I realized that the next chapter of my story was still unwritten. And for the first time since that terrible morning in my kitchen, I was curious to discover what it might hold. The day of Meridian's IPO dawned clear and crisp, a perfect New England autumn morning. I stood in my apartment, smoothing the lapels of my new suit, a power-red Armani that had cost more than I would have dreamed of spending 6 months ago. My reflection showed a woman I barely recognized, confident, polished, with a steely determination in her eyes that hadn't been there before. My phone buzzed with a text from Vanessa. "Car will pick you up in 20. Ready to make history?" I was. The pre-market indicators suggested our IPO would open significantly above even our revised target price. Financial analysts were calling it the most anticipated tech offering of the year, especially following the announcement 3 days earlier that Meridian had entered into exclusive negotiations to acquire the valuable assets of Apex Financial Solutions. What the press release hadn't mentioned was that those valuable assets specifically excluded the executives currently under indictment, including James. The SEC investigation had expanded, revealing a complex web of fraud that stretched back years. James hadn't been the mastermind, but he'd been a willing participant, selling confidential information and manipulating markets for personal gain. The doorman announced that my car had arrived. As I rode the elevator down, I checked my portfolio app one last time. My initial $150,000 investment, the loan from Meridian that I'd repaid last month, had already appreciated to an estimated $1.2 million on paper, based on the projected opening price. By the end of the day, that figure could double. Financial vindication, at least, was within reach. Emotional resolution felt more elusive. The trading floor of the New York Stock Exchange was a blur of activity and noise. As part of Meridian's executive team, I stood on the podium with Michael, Vanessa, and our other senior leaders, watching the countdown to our opening bell. Cameras flashed, reporters shouted questions, and traders prepared for the frenzy that would follow. "Nervous?" Michael asked, leaning close to be heard above the din. "Strangely, no," I replied. And it was true. After everything I'd been through, this moment, while momentous, felt like just another step in a journey that had become increasingly complex. The bell rang. Cheers erupted as our stock symbol illuminated the boards. MRDN. The opening price flashed. $87 per share, nearly double our offering price. In an instant, Meridian Technologies had become a unicorn, and I had become, on paper at least, a millionaire. Michael embraced each of us in turn, his face flushed with triumph. "We did it," he said when he reached me, "and this is just the beginning." The rest of the day passed in a whirlwind of interviews, congratulations, and champagne. By closing bell, MRDN had settled at $92.43 per share, exceeding even the most optimistic projections. The financial press was already calling it the success story of the year, the little startup that had outmaneuvered its larger competitors and was now poised to absorb one of them. It wasn't until late that evening, at the celebration dinner in a private room at Per Se, that I finally had a moment to process what had happened. I stepped out onto the restaurant's terrace, seeking a brief respite from the revelry inside. The New York skyline glittered before me, a tapestry of light and possibility. Quite a view, isn't it? I turned to find Vanessa joining me, 2 glasses of champagne in hand. She offered one to me. To success, she said, raising her glass. To justice, I countered, clinking my glass against hers. We sipped in companionable silence for a moment. I received some news just before dinner, Vanessa said finally. I wanted you to be the first to know. James has accepted a plea deal. He's providing evidence against the senior executives at Apex in exchange for a reduced sentence. I absorbed this information, surprised by my own lack of strong emotion. How reduced? 5 years instead of 20. And full restitution to his victims, including you. So I'll get my money back. The money that had once meant everything to me now seemed almost inconsequential compared to what I'd gained since, and what I'd lost. Yes. Though given today's events, I imagine that's less urgent than it once was. I smiled faintly. It was never really about the money. No, she agreed. It was about power, about taking back what was taken from you, not just financially, but emotionally, your dignity, your agency. Her perception startled me. When did you become a psychologist? I've been where you are, she said simply. Did you never wonder why I was so willing to help you? Why I sought you out specifically? I studied her face, seeing something there I'd missed before, a shadow of old pain, carefully managed but never quite forgotten. James, I asked, realization dawning. She shook her head. His mentor, David Hartley, Apex's CFO. The one who just resigned ahead of indictment, I said, putting the pieces together. Yes, 10 years ago I was engaged to David. He did to me what James did to you, though in my case it wasn't just savings. It was my family's business, 3 generations of work, gone because I trusted the wrong man. Her voice was steady, but I could hear the echoes of old grief. When Michael and I founded Meridian, we promised ourselves we'd change the industry, make it more transparent, more ethical. But I also made a personal promise that someday I'd see David Hartley face consequences. So I was part of your long game. You were an opportunity, she corrected, for both of us. I recognized in you what I once saw in myself. Someone who refused to be a victim. Someone who could transform pain into purpose. I wasn't sure whether to feel manipulated or seen. Perhaps it was both. What happens now? I asked, turning back to the view. Now that we've both gotten what we wanted. That's the question, isn't it? Vanessa swirled her champagne thoughtfully. Revenge is a powerful motivator, but a poor foundation for a life. At some point you have to decide what you're building toward, not just what you're fighting against. Her words struck a chord in me, articulating something I'd been feeling but couldn't name. For months, I'd been driven by the need to prove James wrong, to reclaim what he'd taken from me. Now that victory was in sight, I felt strangely adrift. I don't know who I am without this fight, I admitted, the words painful in their honesty. Then it's time to find out. She placed a hand on my arm. Take some time off. Travel. Reflect. The company will be here when you're ready to return, if that's what you want. And if it's not, then you'll find another path. You're not defined by what happened to you, Alexis, or by how you responded to it. That's just one chapter in your story. Before I could respond, Michael appeared at the terrace door. There you two are. The board members are asking for you, Vanessa. And Alexis, there's someone here who'd like to meet you, the editor of Forbes. They're considering you for their 40 under 40 list. Vanessa squeezed my arm once before following Michael inside. I lingered for a moment longer, looking out at the city lights, feeling the weight of choices yet to be made. My phone buzzed in my clutch. A text from an unknown number. Congratulations on the IPO. I always knew you were destined for great things. I'm sorry for everything. James. My heart raced, then steadied. 6 months ago, this message would have sent me into a spiral of anger and pain. Now it felt like a dispatch from another life, one I had outgrown. I deleted the message without responding and turned back toward the party. Whatever came next, whether I stayed with Meridian or found a new purpose entirely, would be my choice. not a reaction to James's betrayal, but an affirmation of my own worth. As I stepped back into the warm light of the celebration, I realized that the true revenge wasn't in the millions I'd made or in James's downfall. It was in reclaiming my power to write my own story, one where betrayal was just a plot point, not the defining moment. The real investment had been in myself. And unlike the numbers on a stock ticker, the returns on that investment would continue to grow long after today's victory faded into memory.